we're creating something new, so let's create it together. Let's do something meaningful. Let's set the foundations for a process that will last.
Welcome to the Digital Government Podcast. Tune in to discover the future of governance and ways of getting there.
Welcome to this episode of the Digital Government Podcast, where we will unpack how diplomacy, technology, and security intersect in the real world. I'm Patrick Pawlak, speaking from Tallinn, where the Tallinn Cyber Diplomacy Summer School is underway. The summer school brings together diplomats, policymakers, technical experts, and researchers from different regions for a one-week journey through the hottest issues in cyber diplomacy. The school is organized under the EU's Global Gateway strategy by the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, e-Governance Academy, Estonian Center for International Development, and the European Commission. It runs annually, so if you really want to find out what it's about, keep an eye for applications for the next year edition. In this episode, we're zooming in on cyber diplomacy at the United Nations and on the global mechanism on security of and in the use of ICTs. And my guest today is Ambassador Griselda Lopez, who's the permanent representative of El Salvador to the United Nations and the chair of the global mechanism. She's at the center of efforts to turn broad ideas into concrete commitments and to ensure that the global consensus is inclusive, acceptable, and actionable for different states in the same diplomatic room. Ambassador Lopez, thank you for taking time to speak with us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the invitation to be with you from Tallinn to the world, and it's really exciting to be here.
So, for those of you listening to us who have followed the UN cyber discussions, you know that this has been a long journey.
Yes, indeed.
For those just joining, this mechanism is where states argue and try to make rules to keep cyberspace more stable and secure.
Indeed.
This sounds very abstract, so let's start with something concrete. Think for a moment, and you, Ambassador, as well, about your own day. How much of what you do depends on access to internet? Communicating with friends and family, getting work done, accessing public services like electricity, healthcare, or transportation, managing your money, or just staying in touch with the world. Is that 20, 50, 70, or closer to 90% of your day?
I guess it's almost all the day, right? It's
Exactly.
different things that you need technology to go through.
For me, it's probably around 80, 90%
Yes.
as well, excluding sleep. And now imagine it's gone.
Yes.
Right? Imagine all those activities and issues rely on are gone. Not just the Wi-Fi glitch, but a
Yes.
situation where you cannot access these services because a criminal group or a foreign state has attacked the digital infrastructure your country and you, us, depend on.
Okay.
Cyber diplomats at the UN and in regional and bilateral formats are the people working, often very quietly, to reduce the risk of that happening. They negotiate rules, build trust, and create mechanisms for cooperation so that the systems we rely on every day are less likely to be turned off, disrupted, or misused in a crisis. That's the world we're going to explore in this episode. And I couldn't be happier than having you, Ambassador Lopez, with us to sort of start diving in and unpacking these realities of big multilateral policymaking and diplomacy at the UN, New York, and how it actually impacts our daily life. I think this connection is sometimes missing, so hopefully this episode will help our listeners to understand it better. But to start us off, for both listeners who have lived inside this process for years and those encountering it for the first time, how would you describe where the global mechanism stands today? And what excites you most about this particular moment in the process?
Well, thank you. I guess I will have to first honor all the work that has been done to create a permanent mechanism in the United Nations. And something that I'm also very aware of is that it took a lot of effort precisely to achieve that. Now, when I assumed as chair of the global mechanism just this March, But that doesn't mean that El Salvador wasn't involved in this process. Yes, we may be small, but we're very committed to multilateralism. And we were deeply engaged in the sessions of the open-ended working group.
And you have great team members in
I
New York, who
have
everybody
an
knows.
outstanding team that I'm pretty sure they're listening now.
Hello, Julia.
Hello, Julie and Ligia, and also people back in San Salvador. Yeah. Thank you very much for the support. And so now we are in a new phase. Because as I said, in the other processes we had before, they were time-bound limited. But member states agreed on the importance of having a permanent platform when they can come together precisely to discuss the issues that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But it was about not only continue discussing, because member states have already agreed precisely on a framework for the responsible behaviors of states in the cyberspace. It was, in short, in a nutshell, what you said, right? How to make sure that people get their services in a safe manner as well. But now it's time for implementation. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we get a lot of criticism in the UN, that we talk too much. So now it's time for an action-oriented platform. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not only permanent, but action-oriented. So member states throughout the open-ended working group, if you allow me also my recognition to the chair of the group, Ambassador Burhan Garfour from Singapore, that steered the process for all the sessions. So we understood that it was important to have an innovative mechanism that could allow us to have a political space for conversations. And in that sense is the plenary. The plenary, by the way, is going to happen very soon in New York in July this year. But also member states understood that it was important to have more informal discussions that can allow member states to go more into deep. And sometimes, formality doesn't allow you to go to that. So that's why we established 2 different dedicated thematic groups. One of them is basically the discussions of the 5 pillars of the framework that I mentioned. And the other, it's about capacity building. And capacity building, it's because it was also a great agreement and understanding about the crucial role of capacity building, being enabler, but also being a powerful tool for ownership in this process. Not only understanding, not only updating knowledge, information, but also to get that information that will allow you to participate in equal footing in this kind of processes. And besides that, we have another innovative feature in the global mechanism, GMEC. I'm going to call it GMEC from now on. It's basically a roundtable on capacity building. And this is also very relevant because in the way that it was conceived, it was precisely another space for discussing precisely capacity building, but not only among member states, but with different stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I'm talking about private sector, academia, think tanks, technical community, and so on. You asked me what excites me the most. Patrick, I've been chair of other processes. And I guess what I'm really pleased to see of this mechanism is precisely the level of ownership that I can see from member states, the commitment and the interest that they have for this new phase of cyber in the UN. And especially because it's finally happening what they work on for so many years.
Yeah.
And I guess that we have to make the most of this enthusiasm that they have. But this level of ownership and commitment, I see it also from stakeholders. I've been also chair of other processes in the UN, and these are very state-only process. I guess that people that are listening to us, they haven't heard of other processes like the 4th Committee of the General Assembly, right? Or maybe the fifth committee, they may know because of the budget in the UN. But that just to say that something that I value very much in the GMEC is precisely because of the nature of the conversations. Obviously, member states will have the key and the central role in the discussions because it's an intergovernmental process. But stakeholders, they also want to support.
Yeah.
They want to support member states. They want to support the mechanisms. They want to see it functioning. And this is something that I'm very pleased. And it just gives me, I will say, more energy to work in this GMEC.
That's great to hear. And I'll come back to the multi-stakeholder engagement later on in our conversation. But I think this idea of ownership that you have laid out is a very important one. For me personally, for two reasons. On the one hand, it's very clearly linked to the idea of implementation, right? And it really removes from the states this possibility of hide behind what they would call ineffectiveness of the multilateral system and big power politics, right? Because when it comes to the implementation, they're in the driver's seat. We have worked on the framework is out there, and as you rightly said, it's now up to them to put this into implementation. And they cannot really blame disagreements at the UN or ineffectiveness of the process for not passing legislation at the national level, right? So I think that's going to be a very interesting element in this action-oriented component that you were talking about that also links very closely to the idea of capacity building, right? How do we make sure that actually states can live up to their to the commitments they have made and the expectations that we have from them as members of international community. So it's going to be a lot of interesting, I think, dynamics that will be happening. You've mentioned dedicated thematic groups as one of these innovation aspects. And I was wondering whether you see maybe and how you potentially can counter this risk of fragmentation maybe between the groups or reinventing the wheel, right?
Yes.
Where we think exactly because it's such a new element, we're starting from scratch, whereby we all know that this is exactly 20 years of continuous process, the acquis in the making, but also, frankly, a lot of things that have been happening outside of the United Nations, right? In different formats, regional groupings, and so on. So how do you think we can sort of try to think of putting this puzzle together? I know that the conversation about dedicated thematic groups is ongoing and it's something that is in the making, but I was wondering if you have some ideas on how to steer that.
Yes. No, I agree with you in the sense that because it's not only is a new mechanism itself, but also very innovative components. And we tend to repeat what we know. So I guess I will tell you what I don't want to see in the DTGs. First one, as I said, we have the plenary, and this is going to be the formal and political space. When member states will come, they deliver the statements, and we will have the opportunity to listen to everyone that wants to take the floor. What I don't want is that the DTGs will be a repetition of that space. I don't want to listen to statements. I don't want to have this repetition of the modalities of engagement. And that's why it was decided that we needed these more informal opportunities for engage. When, for instance, we can have free and I will say more action-oriented discussions. And I guess it's really important for everybody who's listening that we have to make our part in that sense. We are going to have the opportunity for your representatives to deliver the statements in July, and let's prepare for the session of the DTGs at the end of the year. And why the work of the DTGs is so important is because they will not only have these more action-oriented discussions, they will assess what's working, what's not, share experiences, lessons learned, and they also will provide recommendations that they go back to the plenary. So it's like this virtuous circle about how we intend that the GMEC will work, right? And that's why it's really important that we can see first the difference of the nature of these two spaces so we avoid that repetition. The other thing that you said is that, yes, this mechanism is the result of decades of conversation. And also the role of some regional organizations has been key. I mean, I'm from El Salvador, and obviously I'm more familiar with my regional organization, with my neighborhood, right? So the OAS, they have been doing a lot on that. I really hope that when member states, they see that maybe the discussion is deviating or is basically just repeating what has been done, they, with the help not only of the chair, but also those that will be the co-facilitators of the group, they can also steer the conversation in the right path, right? So I guess that's also really important for everyone to know that we will have, yes, not only the formalities, that it's something that we need to preserve in the United Nations platform, but also these opportunities. Is it still in the making? As you rightly mentioned, the roundtable as well. Member states need to decide a bit further about how exactly it's going to be designed, periodicity of the discussions, and so on. And I guess this is also going back to what excites me the most about this is the opportunity of create something that it could be meaningful, that it could be, I will say, lasting, sustainable as well. And, you know, it's not easy. It's not easy being in a process like this. And what I hope is that all together we can set really strong foundations for the future of the GMEC. I mean, I'm going to be chair only for a very short period of time. So when my successor comes, I hope that he or she will feel relieved that has something to work on, to continue working on, right?
At the same time, there's additional pressure on you to make and get things right because you are sort of setting the precedent for what's coming afterwards. So just saying.
I already know.
You know, getting things right is going to be important.
I'm nervously laughing.
Yes, for those who just hear us but don't see us, I do confirm it's a nervous laughter. So let me also touch upon the point that you have slightly made, the role of regional organizations, and expand this a bit, because they have been very active in the past iterations of the process. One idea I want to sort of run by you and see what you think is: do you think that, in some sense, the global mechanism could become an umbrella for other initiatives and efforts? Here at the summer school, we had the presentations on the counter-ransomware initiative, Palmal process, right? Can we also envisage a way where those initiatives that are taking conversations that are happening outside of the UN meeting room, and frankly, very often, very concrete and action-oriented, what the member states want to see, to some extent also get fed into the conversations at the UN, right? And provide inputs. Maybe the dedicated thematic groups are exactly the way for bringing in some of these mini-lateral consensuses that are emerging in different formats and bringing them to the UN to see how what might not work and be acceptable to broader community.
I guess that the regional organizations, as you rightly mentioned, they have been working on this for many years. They have the experience, and also because of the smaller setting, it's easier for them to implement different initiatives. I can see it again in my own neighborhood. And the role that they can play is definitely not only information sharing, not only sharing the experiences, as I said, what worked, what didn't work, but also building bridges with other regional organizations. Just in these 2 days in Tallinn, I've heard representatives from other countries saying, well, but I don't have an OAS in my region. Well, why don't we see the OAS or maybe others that they're doing the same, and try to see what you can bring back to your own countries, to your own region. And also, why don't we use this valuable wisdom of the regional organizations to try to do something in your countries? I mean, these partnerships that I mentioned you. So I guess that's why it's so important, the work, again, going back to the DTGs, right? Even a country from that organization or the organization itself, maybe they can have the possibility to come and say, this is what we're doing, provide an assessment, and also, as I said, and the most important is not only share the information. That's, I will say, the basic thing. But okay, what do we do with this? What exactly, can we scale it up? Can we replicate it? And when I say replicate it, I want to be very careful with it, because I know that what may be working in what region, not necessarily in other. That's understandable. But at least it gives you an idea about where things may go. What other actors also can help you with different initiatives. And that's why, again, going back to the work with the DTGs, this is the space when you can have more detailed conversations. So if you're listening to us, just imagine that you go to the plenary, you will listen to important statements, and there might be one statement by a member state saying how much they appreciate the work of a given organization. But because of limited of time, that country cannot go deep into description. They cannot go into, this is what the effect it had in our country. This is our own opinion of the project, right? So this is why we needed also a different space, also in the framework of the GMEC, to have this, to bring also not only the valuable assessments of the member states, but also different stakeholders, experts, scientists, and so on.
And I think it will be also important for everybody to also maybe make a bit of a mental switch about what it is. It's not just 2 moments in time throughout the year with the plenary and dedicated thematic groups. We call it a process. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in between those different moments, right? So just to follow on the example you have mentioned, these ideas can also be deepened through different position papers, I think, that member states can submit, right, and clarify exactly where they see value of certain engagements. I think the biggest danger is if we end up with exactly the same statements in the dedicated thematic groups as in the plenary. That's
no, please no. So definitely, I guess, and that's why I use that example, right? It's like we don't want that. We don't want that discussion. You mentioned something, Patrick, about the periodicity. Yes, July, plenary, end of the year, the DTGs. And for those that are in New York, that follow this process, I understand that the work of the UN in fall is really hectic. Not only because we receive our leaders in the high-level week, good luck to all of us, but also because we start the work of the committees. But also, I want to make use of this intersessional period to continue the conversation, not to burden delegations in New York, but also see how we can engage. You mentioned region organizations. Can we do something in that period with the region organizations, maybe online? Or what about other initiatives? So I guess my appeal to all of you that are listening, that were follow the open-ended working group, and now you will be in charge of following the GMEC, is like we're creating something new. So let's create it together. Let's do something meaningful. Let's set the foundations for a process that will last. Because you mentioned some of the issues that the GMEC will address. They will continue evolving. I mean, we need, and that's why we need a permanent mechanism to continue having this conversation and addressing these important challenges.
And I think the fact that it's a permanent mechanism also takes the pressure off a bit, at least that's how I interpret it, of reaching the consensus at all costs, right? Yes, if you don't get the report in 2 years, maybe your successor will have
Let's
to
be
do
positive, Patrick.
No, I'm just... Of course you will get it, but in a very unlikely event that you don't, actually it's on everybody else, right?
Yes.
I mean, one practical consideration for everybody listening could be, states can also start making pledges on what it is that they can do between July and the dedicated thematic groups. What is it exactly that they want to deepen as an aspect of the conversation resulting from the framework in their regional settings, whether it's the African Union Commission, OAS, ECOWAS, and or any other setting, to be honest.
When we were in the organizational session in March, I expressed that it was the interest of the chair of having a decision of the DTGs, precisely because I believe that even though they're going to meet until the end of the year, their work doesn't begin at the end of the year. It has to start from now, precisely preparing their work. So member states, something that I heard so much in March in the organizational session, they were asking for 3 things. They were asking for action-oriented vision.
Mm-hmm.
This is precisely what we were talking about. They were asking for predictability. And this is important because what exactly are we going to discuss? How we're going to discuss? Member states, they need to prepare for that. And I guess stakeholders also, they will appreciate having a better understanding how it's going to be structured, the work and so on, for you to be able to contribute to the discussions in some other way. And the other thing that they were asking is to start working as soon as possible. And again, I understand that desire, and it's coming from decades of working on this issue and having something to finally implement. So that's why.
Okay, so let's dive a bit in this idea of consensus, which I have touched upon, which often proves to be tricky at the UN. And the mechanism, like previous UN processes, operates by consensus. It brings together states with very different capabilities, threat perceptions, and expectations of what the cyber negotiations are so far. Where do you see your responsibility as a chair when this consensus actually feels out of reach? And I know that I'm putting you again on a pessimistic track, but maybe this is also a more realistic one, right? We have seen this in the past. Do you see your role more as a neutral facilitator of those conversations, or actually a bit more of an active steering of the conversation, tying us back to the whole idea of a consensus and maybe what you have also seen in some of the other processes that you have been involved in, as you mentioned?
Thank you. Yes, I guess that I will start with that last point. There are other processes in the UN that they can be adopted. I mean, the outcome can be adopted by voting. So consensus in that case will be something desired, but not mandatory. And this is, you can see in many, for instance, resolutions in the General Assembly when things go to a vote. But something that has been a pillar in the open-ended working group was precisely consensus. And it was decided that this pillar will remain in the GMEC. And you can see in the modalities that it says that it's consensus. And when I say that my responsibility is as a chair to implement, but also to fulfill the mandate, to respect the modalities faithfully and in an impartial way. So, and as I always said, since we assume this responsibility, you will have a chair that is not only committed to the process, a team that is really committed and responsible, but I'm going to be impartial.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the framework just to answer how I see myself as chair. I don't see as a passive chair. I've never been a passive chair. It's not me, for those that know me, know that I'm speaking
true. It's good that you're
true.
staying true to your nature also in the cyber processes. We need that.
I can't. And I see also as a facilitator too. There will be moments that I know we're going to be reaching difficult situations. Mm-hmm. So I really hope that member states can see me as someone that listens to them, as someone that also wants to move forward the process. And as I said all the time, I want to make everyone equally unhappy.
Who's pessimist now?
I've been through that, Patrick. I've been through that. So as I've said to some of you in the course of these months as chair, meet me halfway.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try to find a common ground, again, because of the nature of the consensus, right? You know, I guess it's also important, a reflection that you did you said at the beginning about how different countries engage, the big, small countries with more developments in tech area, others that still struggling with connectivity issues, mm-hmm. right? So we cannot say that we're not on the same position. But I hope that regardless the size of the countries or their position, they can see that they can come to a chair that will try to move everyone together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let me go back to the issue you have mentioned, and which I'm pretty sure many people listening to us deeply care about, which is multi-stakeholder participation.
Yes.
And we are freshly out of the most recent development, with many of us in the community receiving our rejection letters and vetoes from the participation. Access has historically been challenging, mm-hmm. and even when stakeholders are in the room, their influence very often is limited. So from your position as chair, how do you see your role in shaping how multi-stakeholder participation evolves in the mechanism, exactly for those different formats that you've been talking about?
You know, Patrick, I guess that's something, a really good development from the open-ended working group to the GMEC is the fact that there is more transparency in the mm-hmm. sense that everybody knows which member states mm-hmm. opposed to a given organization. And also in the modalities, there is a mandate to the chair to engage with those countries to understand their objections. Mm-hmm. And this is where I am right now. Just before coming to Estonia, I was engaging with the countries. And I guess it's something important that the chair can do, also to engage in with these states to trying to better understand what happened and, mm-hmm. and if there is something that the chair could do. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point here, and I just wanted to bring that just to let everybody know that before that was not the case in the open-ended working group. And now, as you said, it has been the list of those entities, organizations that will not have the opportunity to participate in the formal spaces of the GMEC. But again, I'm saying formal. Mm-hmm. And I believe that you, as stakeholders, you have a lot to contribute to the mechanism. And there are different avenues for that. I mentioned, for instance, in here in Tallinn, opportunities for maybe side events, engaging and addressing a topic that you have a lot of expertise on. Also in the framework of regional organizations, there is more flexibility.
Absolutely.
So also you can contribute to member states in that avenue. But also there are different networks and that you can continue working on. I will mention one, Women in Cyber.
Mm-hmm.
So you can continue engaging with them and providing your valuable inputs and so on in these spaces. So though it may be limited your opportunity to engage, what I really hope is that those that are listening understand that there is also the possibility for you to continue to contribute to this.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't like for those that were rejected that will feel pessimistic.
Rejected.
Well, rejected. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, we don't feel it. I think, it's a very important point that you make. I personally, and I might be on the extreme of the views on multi-stakeholder engagement, but it's not always about being in the room, Those rooms are neither very beautiful,
Yes.
not necessarily always very user-friendly, but I think what really drives us in the multi-stakeholder community is really contributing to the cause. So I think we just have to continue doing what we're doing best, as you said, and hope that this is going to find a way to not only to the meeting rooms, but actually to the work of the global mechanism, right? It doesn't really serve much going and reading a 2-minute statement during the session, and for that to fall completely flat in the discussions between the states, right? So I think there are many ways of doing this. I want to. I mean, I don't know to what extent you can share the outcome of the consultations you have, but what strikes me really is that everybody in the room says, yes, we do believe in the value of engaging with other stakeholders, whether it's private sector, civil society, and so on. And yet we are facing the situations of vetoes, which can be driven by many different reasons. So I actually, and maybe then is an aspect we do not always really dig into, but from your conversations with those countries that actually have vetoed, what are some of the arguments that are being brought up? Are they very cyber specific? Are they organization specific? There might be also a bigger political issue behind, right, from where the country or the given organization is based. Do you have any feel of what seems to be driving those vetoes?
I will answer in a very short way.
Yes.
It's a bit of everything. It's a bit of everything. What I will do in July is to brief member states about the outcome of the consultations. What was discussed there remains private, remains reserved. I'm again, as a chair, I'm trying also to provide the opportunity not only to engage with member states in these difficult issues, but also to let them know that they will have a chair that listens to them, and that if there's something that I could do, and this is something that I ask, is there something that I could do? But I guess that at this stage, the list will remain the same. There won't be no change in July, but it was a bit of everything, I would say.
Okay, and I think here I should say big thanks to, again, your team, but also colleagues in the Secretariat in the UN working for this list. I imagine it was not easy to manage this process, so a big shout out as well to Catherine. Yes. Okay, so maybe let's end on a very optimistic sort of a question, right? Given everything you see, what gives you this cautious optimism? We started with excitement, but let's end with the optimism and what you see as something that's really a good sign of where we're heading.
I'm saying this not because I'm from a small state, but what really gives me a lot of energy, it's precisely small states wanted to have a saying in this. Again, my experience here in Tallinn has been great, and there was someone from a very small state saying, like, I want to learn. I want to understand this cyber diplomacy thing, because she's from a tech community, and I want to go back to my country and see what we can do and how we can better engage in the GMEC. And I want to also see what we can do at regional level.
Mm-hmm.
And this enthusiasm, it's really great. Something that really I find so interesting is that, I've been a diplomat for almost 20 years and always working in multilateral affairs. And when you're talking about cyber diplomacy, it's a whole community.
Mm-hmm.
It's tech experts, yes, diplomats, regulators, it's private sector. So it's a fantastic community. And, no one knows everything 100%. And that's why you need to interact with all of them. And it's been fascinating to see that interaction and that desire to share information. Okay, this is my experience from my angle. And diplomats also been challenged to learn. And also tech communities challenged to learn a bit more about how diplomacy works.
Mm.
So I guess that's also something that gives me a lot of hope that it's a new way of doing things. For me at least, as I said, I've been working in other processes. I'm also staying very humble and very committed. And I guess that also gives me a lot of energy and hope that it's all about us. That all of us, the different walks of life, we can contribute to this. And I hope that everybody will feel that they have a place in the GMEC, whether you're a diplomat, whether you're from private sector, you're from a tech community, you're from think tank, you're academic, you're a scientist. And I could continue, Patrick. But I hope that all that are listening to me, they feel that it's something that we should all do together.
Do you want to know what's my reason for cautious optimism?
Tell me.
Having a chair like you steering the process. I must say it's not only my opinion, but a lot of people who have participated in the school. No, it's not a nervous laughter right now. No, a lot of people really appreciate you taking time for having conversations like this one. I know that you're also leading another process. It's all very intensive. So for us to know that there's someone open to dialogue and listening to those views is extremely important. So thank you again to you, your team and colleagues for doing this. And thank you for the conversation, for giving us a window into how this mechanism actually works or will work from the chair seat. To those listening us, if you found this episode useful, consider sharing it with your colleagues, students, cyber diplomats, family members who are trying to understand how cyber diplomacy and the UN really operates and works. Thank you for listening and thank you for the conversation, Ambassador.
Thank you, Patrick.
This podcast is brought to you by the eGovernance Academy. Tune in next time.